The morning sun broke through the trees as Jack Miller stepped onto his front porch, coffee in hand. The steam rose into the crisp air as he looked out over his land. All 12 acres of it were his, bought with every penny he'd saved during his 15 years in the army. This place was everything he had dreamed about during those long nights overseas. "Come on, boys," he called, and his 3 massive dogs bounded out the door. They were Caucasian shepherds, huge, fluffy mountain dogs with serious faces and loyal hearts. Bear, the oldest, weighed almost 170 pounds and had been with Jack for 6 years. Then there were the brothers, Rocky and Scout, who Jack had rescued from a bad situation 3 years back. The dogs ran ahead, patrolling their territory as Jack walked the edge of his property. His boots crunched on the fallen leaves as he checked his fence line. It was a good, strong fence, 6 feet high with another foot buried underground to keep his dogs safely inside. Every 50 feet or so, bright red signs warned "Private property" and BWL of dog is. "You guys hungry?" Jack asked as the dogs circled back to him. Bear pushed his giant head under Jack's hand, demanding attention. These dogs were his family now. After coming home with jumpy nerves and bad dreams, Jack had found peace in this quiet place and in caring for these animals. His little cabin wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living room with a stone fireplace, but it was home. Jack had built the wide porch himself, along with the workshop out back where he made custom wooden furniture to sell online. Life was simple, and that's exactly how he liked it. Most days, Jack hardly saw another soul. His nearest neighbor was old Mr. Henderson, who lived about half a mile down the road and minded his own business. The rest of his property bordered state forest land, which was why Jack had chosen it. No nosy neighbors, no traffic, no noise, just trees, wildlife, and peace. But lately, something had been changing. For the past few months, Jack had been hearing construction sounds coming from the other side of the ridge. He'd ignored it at first, figuring it was too far to bother him. But yesterday, while hiking with the dogs, he'd climbed up to see what was happening. What he saw made his stomach drop. A whole neighborhood of big fancy houses had sprung up just beyond his property line. Where there had once been trees and wildflowers, now there were perfect green lawns and wide driveways with shiny cars. A stone sign near a paved entrance road read Pinewood Estates, luxury living in nature's embrace. Nature's embrace? Jack had snorted at that. They'd cleared every tree to build those houses. As he finished his morning walk, Jack felt uneasy. His safe, quiet world suddenly seemed threatened. Bear sensed his mood and stayed closer than usual, pressing against Jack's leg now and then as if to reassure him. "It'll be fine," he told the dog, scratching behind his ears. "They're way over there, and we're here. No big deal." What Jack couldn't know, was that at that very moment, a woman named Victoria Parker was standing in her brand new kitchen in Pinewood Estates, looking out her window with binoculars. She'd just been elected president of the neighborhood's homeowners association, and she was inspecting what she called the eyesore property next door. Victoria put down her binoculars and picked up her phone. "Hello, Bill. It's Victoria from the HOA. I think I found the perfect spot for our summer festival." Jack woke to the sound of Bear's deep warning bark. The big dog never barked without reason. Quickly pulling on jeans and a flannel shirt, Jack looked at his watch. 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday. Who would be out here this early? He stepped onto his porch and squinted in the morning light. 3 figures were walking across his meadow, about 100 yards from his house. One woman in a bright red blazer held what looked like a clipboard, while a man in khakis was stretching a measuring tape across the ground. The third person, another woman, was taking pictures with her phone. "What the hell?" Jack muttered, whistling for his dogs. Bear came immediately, with Rocky and Scout bounding up seconds later. "Come on, boys, let's go see what's happening." Jack walked calmly toward the intruders, his dogs heeling perfectly beside him. He'd spent hundreds of hours training them, and it showed. As massive as they were, the Caucasian shepherds moved with quiet discipline, watching the strangers with alert eyes. The woman in the red blazer saw him coming and straightened her shoulders, putting on a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she wore more jewelry than made sense for tramping around in a field. "Excuse me," Jack called when he was about 20 feet away. "This is private property. Can I help you with something?" The woman's smile didn't waver. "Good morning. You must be the owner. I'm Victoria Parker, president of the Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association." She gestured to her companions. "This is Greg, our landscaping chairman, and Diane, our event coordinator." Jack noticed none of them seemed concerned about trespassing. They'd also kept nervously eyeing his dogs, who were sitting calmly at his side. "I'm Jack Miller. And yes, this is my private property." He pointed to a no trespassing sign clearly visible at the edge of the meadow. "Those signs are pretty hard to miss." Victoria waved her hand dismissively. We know it's yours, technically. We're here because Pinewood Estates is planning our first annual Summer Arts Festival. This meadow would be absolutely perfect. Level ground, beautiful views, plenty of parking space." Jack blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "Hold on. You're planning to have an event on my land?" "Without asking me." "Well, we're asking you now," Victoria said, her smile tightening. "It would be for just one weekend in June. We'd have local artists, food vendors, maybe a small concert stage right over there." She pointed toward the center of his meadow. "The whole community would benefit. Your property would finally serve a purpose." Jack felt his temper rising but kept his voice steady. "My property already serves its purpose. It's my home." Victoria looked around with barely disguised distaste. "But you're not using most of it. All this space just sitting empty." "That's how I like it," Jack said. "Empty and quiet." Greg stepped forward, measuring tape still in hand. "We could offer you a small fee for the weekend use. And think of the exposure. Your property values would increase once people see the potential of the land." Jack noticed that while they were talking, Diane had wandered a few yards away and was taking more pictures. "Ma'am, please stop photographing my property." Diane jumped, looking guilty. "I'm just getting ideas for the layout." "There isn't going to be a layout," Jack said firmly. "There isn't going to be a festival here. This is private property, not a public park." Victoria's smile finally dropped. Her eyes narrowed as she looked from Jack to his dogs and back again. "Mr. Miller, I understand you're new to the area." "I've lived here for 6 years." "But Pinewood Estates is bringing progress and culture to this region. All we're asking is for a little cooperation from our neighbors." "I'm not part of your community," Jack said. "I don't have to cooperate with anything." Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, holding it out to him. "Why don't you think about it? Here's my contact information. We can discuss the details later when you've had time to consider our offer." Jack didn't take the card. "There's nothing to consider. The answer is no." Victoria's face hardened. She placed the card on a rock near Jack's feet. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Miller. Pinewood Estates is a community that gets things done." She turned to her companions. "Come along. We have other matters to attend to." As they walked away, Jack heard her say quietly to Greg, "Difficult man. We'll need to try a different approach." Bear pressed against Jack's leg, sensing his tension. Jack scratched the big dog's ears. "It's okay, boy. They're leaving." But somehow, Jack didn't think it would be that simple. A week passed without any sign of Victoria or her HOA friends. Jack almost convinced himself they'd gotten the message and moved on. Almost. That illusion shattered when he checked his mailbox on Monday. Inside was an official-looking envelope with Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association printed in the corner. Jack tore it open as he walked back to his house. Inside was a letter printed on fancy paper with a gold-embossed logo at the top. Jack read it with growing disbelief. "Dear neighbor, your property has been found in violation of Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association landscaping standards. Section 12.4 of our bylaws prohibits overgrown vegetation and unmaintained natural areas visible from community properties." "You've got to be kidding me," Jack muttered, crushing the paper in his fist. His dogs looked up from their spots on the porch, ears perked at his tone. Over the next 3 weeks, more letters arrived. Each one grew more official sounding than the last. There were notices about unsightly structures, his workshop, unauthorized livestock, his dogs, and invitations to HOA meetings where they would be discussing adjoining properties. Jack wrote back each time, using certified mail so they couldn't claim they never got his responses. His letters were simple and direct. His property was not part of their community, their rules didn't apply to him, and they needed to stop trespassing. They ignored him completely. Then on a rainy Thursday afternoon, Jack came home from a supply run to town and found something that made his blood boil. Someone had placed tall wooden stakes all across his meadow, connected with bright orange string. It looked like they were marking out spaces, booth spaces, he realized with a jolt. Jack pulled every single stake out of the ground, throwing them in a pile by his workshop. That night, he went online and ordered 4 security cameras, paying extra for overnight shipping. By Saturday, he had the cameras installed, one on each corner of his property line facing the meadow. They connected to his phone, sending alerts when they detected movement. He didn't have to wait long. That very evening, his phone buzzed with an alert. Jack opened the app and watched in real time as a group of people entered his meadow from the direction of Pinewood Estates. Victoria was there, easy to spot in another bright outfit. With her were 4 men carrying tools and more stakes. Jack grabbed his jacket and flashlight. "Stay," he told the dogs, who whined but obeyed. He reached the meadow just as they were hammering in the last of the stakes. His flashlight beam cut through the dusk, catching them like deer in headlights. "Evening," Jack said, keeping his voice level despite his anger. "Seems like you folks are having trouble understanding what private property means." Victoria stepped forward, chin raised. "Mr. Miller, be reasonable. The festival planning is well underway. We have vendors committed and tickets being sold." "None of that is my problem," Jack said. "You're trespassing again, and now you're altering my property without permission." One of the men, a tall guy with a tool belt, stepped forward. "Look, buddy, we're just doing a job." Mrs. Parker said all the permissions were handled. Jack turned to Victoria. "Is that what you told them, that you had permission?" She didn't answer directly. "The community board has approved the location." "I don't care what your board approved," Jack said, his patience wearing thin. "This is my land." Victoria sniffed. "We'll see about that. My husband plays golf with Sheriff Thompson. Perhaps he can explain the concept of being a good neighbor to you." That was it. Jack pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the sheriff right now. Let's see what he has to say about trespassing and property damage." 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up Jack's driveway. Deputy Wilson was a big man with a tired face who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He listened to both sides, looked at Jack's deed papers, and then turned to Victoria. "Ma'am, Mr. Miller is right. This is private property, clearly marked. You and your group need to leave." Victoria's face flushed red. "But our festival needs to be held somewhere else," Deputy Wilson finished for her. "Or you need to get proper written permission." After they finally left, Jack thought that would be the end of it, but as Deputy Wilson was leaving, he paused. "Just a word of advice," he said quietly. "Mrs. Parker's husband does play golf with my boss, and half the county council lives in Pinewood Estates. Might be easier to work something out with them." Deputy Wilson shrugged. "I'm just saying, sometimes being right doesn't matter as much as being smart." As the patrol car disappeared down his driveway, Jack felt something he hadn't felt since his army days, the sensation of being surrounded by enemies, with nowhere safe to retreat. Jack stared at him in disbelief. "You're telling me to let them use my land, even though they have no right to it?" Jack was at the local hardware store buying fence posts when he first saw it. A bright yellow flyer taped to the counter caught his eye, and what he read made him forget why he'd come to the store in the first place. Pinewood Estates, PRESENTS, First Annual Summer Arts Festival, June 12 to 13. Live music, local artists, food trucks, and family fun. There was a colorful map at the bottom of the flyer. Jack's heart sank as he recognized the layout. It was his meadow, complete with a little stage right where his dogs liked to nap in the sun, and vendor booths scattered across land that had been in his possession for 6 years. "You okay there, Jack?" asked Tom, the store owner, noticing how pale Jack had suddenly become. "They can't do this," Jack muttered, tapping the flyer. "This is my property." Tom frowned and leaned closer to look at the map. "That does look like your place. There must be some mistake." "No mistake. They've been trying to pressure me into letting them use it. I've said no at every turn." Jack took a picture of the flyer with his phone. "I need to go. Can I come back for those posts later? Sure thing. Good luck sorting this out. Jack drove straight to the Pinewood Estates Community Center, a fancy new building with stone columns and a water feature out front. The HOA office was inside, according to the directory. The receptionist, a young man with a bright smile, looked up as Jack entered. Good morning. How can I help you? I need to speak with Victoria Parker. Now. The smile dimmed a bit. Do you have an appointment? No, but she'll want to talk to me. I'm Jack Miller, the owner of the property she's advertising as her festival grounds. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. Oh. Let me see if she's available. He picked up his phone and spoke quietly before looking back at Jack. I'm sorry, Mrs. Parker is in meetings all day. Perhaps you could leave your contact information. She has my contact information, Jack said, his voice level but firm. What she doesn't have is my permission to use my land. I need to see these so-called festival plans and talk to whoever's in charge of this thing. I can take any documents you have, the receptionist offered. Jack placed his property deed and tax records on the counter. Make copies of these. I want them given to Mrs. Parker and every board member. And I want a copy of whatever permit they think they have for using my land. The receptionist took the papers nervously. I'll make sure Mrs. Parker gets these. Jack drove home, his mind racing. This was getting out of hand. These people were acting like his land was public property, like his repeated refusals meant nothing. The next morning, Jack checked his email and found a message from Victoria Parker. The subject line read, Festival Arrangements, Compensation Offer. The email was polite but firm, as if the decision had already been made. Dear Mr. Miller, the Pinewood Estates HOA Board is pleased to offer you $200 as a land use fee for the weekend of June 12 to 13 for our Summer Arts Festival. This community event will significantly increase visibility and value for your undeveloped property. We require confirmation that your dogs will be securely contained during the entire festival weekend. Our insurance provider has concerns about liability. Festival setup will begin Friday, June 11. Please ensure clear access to the meadow area. We look forward to a successful community partnership. Regards, Victoria Parker, President, Pinewood Estates HOA. Jack read the email 3 times, his anger growing with each reading. They weren't even pretending to ask anymore. They were telling him what would happen on his own property, offering a pitiful amount of money and demanding he control his dogs. He glanced out the window at Bear, Rocky, and Scout playing in the yard. The 3 massive dogs romped happily in the space Jack had created just for them, unaware that a group of strangers was planning to take over their territory. Jack reached for his phone. This had gone too far. It was time to bring in a lawyer. An emergency injunction is your best bet, said Liz Harmon, tapping her pen against a legal pad. Jack had found her through a veterans support group. She specialized in property disputes and offered discounts to former military personnel. Her office was small but tidy, with law books lining the walls and a window that looked out onto the main street of the county seat. Jack had brought all his documentation, property deeds, tax records, the HOA letters, and printouts of their email exchanges. So do you think we can stop them? Jack asked, trying not to sound as desperate as he felt. The festival was only 10 days away. Liz nodded. You have a solid case. Clear property boundaries, no easements, plenty of evidence that you've repeatedly denied permission. She flipped through his folder. And these security camera videos of them trespassing and placing stakes. Gold. For the first time in weeks, Jack felt a glimmer of hope. How soon can we file? I'll have the paperwork ready tomorrow. We'll request an emergency hearing due to the time-sensitive nature. Liz made some notes. Judge Williams usually handles these cases. He's fair, follows the law to the letter. 2 days later, Jack sat beside Liz in the county courthouse, waiting for their case to be called. Victoria wasn't there, but a sharp-looking lawyer in an expensive suit represented the HOA. When their case number was announced, Jack stood, ready to finally put an end to this nightmare. But before Liz could speak, the HOA's lawyer stepped forward. Your Honor, we've just been informed that Judge Williams needs to recuse himself from this case. The clerk whispered something to the judge, who nodded. That's correct. It appears I have a conflict of interest. This case will need to be reassigned. Jack leaned toward Liz. What's happening? Liz's expression was grim. Judge Williams lives in Pinewood Estates. He's part of their HOA. She gathered her papers. This means a delay while they find another judge. Outside the courthouse, Jack couldn't hide his frustration. How long will that take? Liz checked her calendar. The next available judge isn't until the 15th. The 15th. The festival starts on the 12th. Jack ran a hand through his hair. So that's it? They win by default? Not necessarily. We'll send cease and desist letters to everyone, the HOA board members individually, their corporate office, the festival vendors, their insurance company. Make it clear they're all liable for trespassing. Over the next week, Jack and Liz sent out certified letters to everyone connected with the festival. Jack also installed a heavy metal gate across the access road to his property and added more no trespassing signs. He even bought a chain and padlock for the gate, something he'd never needed before. Meanwhile, Bear, Rocky, and Scout sensed his anxiety. The dogs stayed closer to him than usual, watching him with worried eyes as he paced around the property. The day before the festival, Jack drove into town for supplies. He wasn't sure what to expect when he returned, but it wasn't what he found. His new gate lay on the ground, the chain cut. A large truck was parked in his meadow, and workers were unloading metal framework for what looked like a stage. Extension cords snaked across the grass from the direction of Pinewood Estates, and a man was setting up speakers. Jack parked his truck and strode across the meadow, fighting to keep his temper in check. "Who's in charge here?" he demanded. A middle-aged man in a festival T-shirt approached him. "I'm Pete, the event coordinator. Can I help you?" "Yes, by getting off my property. This land is private. You have no permission to be here." Pete looked confused. "But we have all the permits." He pulled out a clipboard and showed Jack a document. "See? Signed and everything." Jack stared at the paper. There, at the bottom, was what appeared to be his signature, except he'd never signed anything. It was a crude forgery, not even close to his actual handwriting. He pulled out his phone and took a picture of the permit. "This signature is forged. I'm calling my lawyer, and then I'm calling the police." Pete's face paled. "Look, man, I was just hired to set up. They told me everything was arranged." "Well, they lied," Jack said, already dialing Liz's number. "And now you're all trespassing." As workers continued setting up around him, seemingly oblivious to the confrontation, Jack realized with a sinking feeling that the festival was going forward, no matter what he said. The question now was, what was he going to do about it? Jack woke at dawn on Saturday after a restless night. He'd barely slept, his mind racing with plans and worries. The sounds outside confirmed his fears. Car engines, voices, the beeping of vehicles backing up. The festival was moving forward despite everything. He made coffee and stepped onto his porch. What he saw made him grip his mug so hard it nearly cracked. At least 50 cars were already parked in the far corner of his meadow. People in bright vests directed traffic, waving more vehicles in. Vendor tents formed neat rows, and a large banner hung between two trees. Pinewood Estates WLCOMESU. Those were his trees. Trees he planted himself 5 years ago. Jack called Liz and updated her on the situation. "Keep documenting everything," she advised. "Take videos, photos, note the time and number of people. We'll use it all in court." After hanging up, Jack made a decision. He went inside and retrieved his property deeds, the cease and desist letters, and the picture of the forged permit. He set up a camera on a tripod on his porch, pointing at the meadow. Then he whistled for his dogs. The 3 Caucasian shepherds came bounding over, excited for their morning routine. Instead of their usual run, Jack carefully attached their extended leads to the sturdy posts he'd installed years ago. These special leads allowed the dogs to roam a large area while keeping them from reaching the parking section of the meadow. "Stay close to the house today, boys," he told them, giving each dog a good scratch behind the ears. "We've got unwanted guests." By noon, the festival was in full swing. Hundreds of people wandered between the booths. Music blared from speakers near the stage. The smell of food truck burgers and funnel cakes drifted across the property. Jack sat on his porch, recording everything and occasionally checking on his dogs. Bear, Rocky, and Scout were restless but obedient, watching the crowds of strangers with alert eyes. A few festival goers had pointed at the massive dogs and taken pictures from a distance, but most were too busy enjoying themselves to notice. Around 1 o'clock, Jack spotted Victoria making her way toward his house. She wore a blue sundress and a wide-brimmed hat with Festival Director pinned to it. Her smile was tight as she approached the porch steps. "Mr. Miller," she called, not coming too close to the dogs. "I see you've decided to join us after all." "I haven't joined anything," Jack replied calmly. "You're all trespassing. I'm documenting it for the lawsuit." Victoria's smile faltered. "Now, there's no need for that kind of talk. The festival is a huge success. Everyone's having a wonderful time." She gestured at the crowds. "Surely you can see how much good this is doing for the community." "My property isn't here for your community's entertainment," Jack said, "and that forged permit won't hold up in court." Victoria's face hardened. "Those dogs need to be removed immediately. They're scaring our guests. The dogs are on my property, properly secured. They stay." Before Victoria could respond, a loud popping sound came from one of the food trucks. Jack recognized it immediately. A propane tank backfiring. But to his dogs, it sounded like a gunshot. Bear let out a deep, thunderous bark that seemed to shake the air itself. Rocky and Scout joined in, all three dogs lunging to the ends of their leads, their massive bodies straining as they barked ferociously at the perceived threat. The reaction was instant. People nearest to Jack's house screamed and backed away. Someone yelled "Bear," and the panic spread like wildfire. Parents grabbed children, food was dropped, and the crowd began to surge away from the dogs. "Control those animals!" Victoria shrieked, backing away so quickly she stumbled and fell on the grass. "They are controlled," Jack replied, watching as chaos unfolded across his meadow. "They're on leads and on my property, exactly where they're supposed to be." A second pop came from the food truck, sending the dogs into another frenzy of barking. This time, the crowd's reaction was even more dramatic. People knocked over vendor tents in their rush to get away. Someone tripped into a table of pottery, sending it crashing to the ground. The band on stage stopped playing mid-song as half their audience fled. Within minutes, what had been an organized festival was now a scene of complete chaos. Victoria struggled to her feet, her hat gone and her perfect hairdo coming undone. "You planned this," she accused, pointing a shaking finger at Jack. "You set this up to ruin everything." Jack shook his head. "No, Victoria, you did this. You built this festival on stolen land. What did you expect would happen?" As more and more people streamed toward the parking area, Jack just sat on his porch, his dogs now calmer at his side, and continued recording the disaster unfolding on his property. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, the festival grounds were almost empty. A few confused vendors still packed up their unsold goods. Abandoned tents flapped in the breeze. Trash was everywhere: paper plates, plastic cups, dropped food, and promotional flyers scattered across Jack's once pristine meadow. Jack sat on his front steps, his dogs finally calm and sleeping at his feet. He was reviewing the video footage on his camera when a news van pulled up his driveway. A woman with a microphone and a cameraman approached cautiously, eyeing the sleeping dogs. "Mr. Miller? I'm Nancy Chen from Channel 5 News. We've heard there was some trouble at the Pinewood Estates Festival. Would you be willing to comment?" Jack considered turning them away, but then thought better of it. "Sure," he said, standing up. "But first, I'd like to show you something." He led them to his property line, pointing out his no trespassing signs. He showed them his deed papers and the emails where he repeatedly denied permission for the festival. Finally, he showed them the security camera footage of Victoria and her team planting stakes on his land and the forged permit with his fake signature. This wasn't a case of festival trouble, Jack explained as the camera rolled. This was a case of trespassing, forgery, and a homeowners association that thought rules didn't apply to them. The story aired on the evening news. By morning, it had spread to social media and national news sites. HOA FISCO, Homeowners Association hosts unauthorized event on veterans' land, read one headline. The footage of panicking festival goers fleeing from barking dogs made for dramatic viewing, even though Jack's calm explanation that the dogs had been properly secured on their own property was included in most reports. 3 days later, Jack received a call from Liz, his lawyer. "You might want to sit down for this," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "The judge saw us this morning. Not only did he grant our injunction, but he's issued a temporary restraining order against Victoria Parker and the entire HOA board. They can't come within 100 feet of your property." "That's great news," Jack said, relief washing over him. It gets better. Several festival vendors are suing the HOA for misrepresentation. They were told the festival had all proper permissions, and the district attorney is considering charges for the forged permit. Over the next few weeks, Jack's phone rang constantly. Reporters wanted interviews. Neighbors he'd never met brought him baked goods and apologized for what those Pinewood Estates snobs had done. A few brave homeowners from Pinewood Estates itself came by to express their embarrassment and share that they'd called for an emergency election to replace the entire HOA board. The meadow took time to clean up. Volunteers from the local veterans group helped Jack remove the trash and repair the trampled grass. One of them, a landscaper, brought wildflower seeds to replant the areas that had been most damaged. 6 months later, the court case was settled. The judge ordered the Pinewood Estates HOA to pay for all property restoration costs, plus damages for trespassing and emotional distress. The final amount came to just over $75,000. Victoria and 2 other board members were also ordered to perform community service for the forged permit incident. Jack used part of the money to build a higher fence with a proper electric gate. He donated the rest to the veteran support organization that had connected him with Liz. He even let them hold a small, properly permitted barbecue on his property as a fundraiser. The 3 dogs, Bear, Rocky, and Scout, became local celebrities. The town's craft brewery even created a new beer called Guard Dog IPA with a label featuring 3 fluffy mountain dogs. Jack received a lifetime supply. As for Victoria, she put her house on the market just a week after the court ruling. The for sale sign went up overnight, and neighbors noticed moving trucks soon after. Word around town was that she'd relocated to Florida, where apparently another unsuspecting community would have to deal with her particular brand of entitlement. The new Pinewood Estates HOA board sent Jack a formal letter of apology along with a plaque for his fence that read, "Property line, strictly respected." It was the only HOA notice Jack ever displayed. When asked later if he regretted how things had turned out, Jack would just smile and scratch Bear behind the ears. "My dogs were just doing what they're supposed to do," he'd say, "protecting their home. Same as me."